Today, we're exploring a question that you might be asking yourself. We've saved $1.8 million by the age of 58. So why don't we feel ready to retire? I'm a certified financial planner and wealth associate at Confluence Financial Partners, and this is something that I hear over and over again. Reaching a seven-figure nest egg is a remarkable achievement, but many still carry an uneasy feeling about whether they can retire. Rising costs, uncertain markets, healthcare decisions, all of it can cloud what should be a period of confidence and excitement. But here's the thing. What we discovered is that this feeling of unease isn't always about lacking money. It can be about lacking something more important. So in today's video, I'll share a scenario where we had a couple who saved $1.8 million by the age of 58, whom we'll call Carl and Connie Confluence. And I'll show you how we help them turn uncertainty into clarity by shifting their mindsets. Stick around because by the end, my hope is that you'll have a clearer vision of what proper retirement planning really looks like and could look like for you. So let's get right into it. Most people assume that there's a magic number. Hit a target like 1.5 million or 2 million or maybe $3 million, and you'll be set for retirement. But here's the truth. Clarity doesn't come from a number. It comes from understanding how your money is going to support your lifestyle. Carl and Connie had done everything right. They had worked for decades, saved diligently, and avoided lifestyle inflation. And yet, even after accumulating $1.8 million, they were unsure if it was enough. Why? Because they didn't have a personalized plan that translated how that money would support their lives in retirement. They had savings, but no system. That's where we introduced them to our approach, which is a scenario-based planning with retirement spending guardrails. This model doesn't just give a yes or no answer, it creates a visual framework that helps them explore underlying concerns about retirement, such as how they can spend comfortably, how they'll have to adjust potentially during market turbulence, and how they can stay on track without second guessing every financial decision. And what really surprised them, and might surprise you too, is how much clarity it came from not just crunching more numbers, but from talking through what I call the retirement spending paradox, which I'll tell you what that is and why I clicked with them in just a minute. But first, for them, the biggest hurdle wasn't just the money, it was the unknowns. What if inflation is a bit higher than we had planned for? What if the markets go through another rough patch like they did in 2008? And what if healthcare costs keep rising? Or one of them needs extra support later in life? These aren't irrational fears. They're prudent, deeply human questions. And without a framework for addressing them, these what-ifs can make the idea of retirement feel even more stressful. Even people who are financially well-prepared often find themselves emotionally stuck, not because they're lacking resources, but because they haven't built the emotional resilience that comes from working through uncertainty. That's why we remain curious. Before jumping to solutions and strategies, we ask them open-ended questions like, what's keeping you up at night? What are you most afraid of going wrong? If X happens, how do you think you'll respond? We weren't just trying to calm their nerves, we were really trying to uncover what really mattered to them. And so for Connie and Carl, it turned out that one of their biggest concerns wasn't inflation itself, but what would a prolonged period of high inflation mean for their lifestyle throughout retirement? In 2024 and 2025, we've been feeling the effects of higher inflation on everything from our cars to our groceries. And that's seriously concerning them. So we walked through those scenarios. We looked at what would happen if inflation averaged 4.5% instead of 2.5%. We also ran simulations where if the market drops 20% in the first year of retirement, and then we stress test their spending plan against that. Then we asked, if that happened, what would you want to do? You see, that question, what would you do if, became a real pivot point for them. Would they cut back their discretionary spending for a certain period of time? Maybe push off the house renovation they'd been planning? Or they tap into their cash reserves? These weren't just hypothetical exercises, they were practice rounds for the emotional experience of retirement. And just like any good fire drill, it's far better to run these situations before you're actually living through them. We also explored healthcare scenarios. Since they're both under the age of 65, we worked with our healthcare experts to explore different healthcare options for them. Then we built a timeline that mapped out exactly when Medicare would kick in their financial plan, and we factored in additional costs associated with their private health insurance pre-65. We also layered in long-term care expenses at the end of their plan, not to scare them, but to empower them. Because once they saw what the long-term care might cost and how their assets would be able to support that, they stopped viewing it as an unmanageable fear. It was just another cost in their plan. The result wasn't perfection because, of course, that's not possible. Real retirement security doesn't come from having the answers to every single question. It comes from staying the course, asking better questions, and being prepared to adapt and pivot if you need to. If this type of planning is something that you think would be valuable for you and your family, you might find value in my retirement readiness review. It's a personalized video where I break down your retirement outlook and highlight potential blind spots. I'll put a link in the description if you want to learn more about it. So even after reviewing all these numbers and what if scenarios with Carl and Connie, and even though the numbers made sense on paper, they still kind of hesitated. They were 58 with $1.8 million saved. They had no high interest rate debts. Their spending projections were conservative. And really every spreadsheet said that they could retire comfortably. And yet it just felt like they couldn't pull the trigger. You see, this kind of hesitation isn't about the numbers. It's about emotions, specifically the fear of running out of money. This is what I like to call the retirement spending paradox, where retirees have the resources to live well, but struggle to enjoy their wealth out of fear that one wrong move could unravel everything. And this is more common than most people realize, especially among disciplined savers. I mean, think about it. After years of budgeting and really saying no to a lot of things, that becomes second nature. And suddenly, now you're encouraged to say yes, and that can feel reckless, even when it's not. To help them break that fear, we didn't want to just throw more numbers at them. We wanted to show them a system. So we used a guardrails-based retirement income model that moved beyond a static withdrawal rule. Instead of saying you can take 4% per year from your portfolio and hope for the best, we showed them what would happen if markets did better or worse than expected. We ran Monte Carlo simulations to calculate their probability of success within their financial plan, but then we translated that into a flexible real-world income strategy. So what we did is create spending guardrails, a range that adapts to market performance. If the market is up, we encourage them to spend more. And if the market is down, we suggest tightening the belt on their spending just slightly. Nothing drastic, no panic, just subtle, informed adjustments that keep their retirement on track while preserving their lifestyle. To make this real for them, we use visual modeling. We showed them two side-by-side scenarios, one with their current anticipated spending during good and bad markets, and one with increased spending during really good markets. This showed them how if they're willing to be flexible with their spending, they can actually spend more during the good times if they're willing to tighten their belt a little bit and spend less during turbulent markets. We also discussed and explored what Michael Kitces coined the retirement spending smile. He also discusses a popular example of the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years of retirement and how spending in retirement can stay elevated in the first part of retirement while you're healthier and more full of energy. Then it can dip down in the middle part of retirement as you start to slow down physically. And then towards the end of retirement, it might kick back up due to healthcare costs. And this is why dynamic financial planning, and especially income planning, can be so important than just looking at a static spending formula like the 4% rule. This allowed them to see the real impact of taking that Italy trip early on and gifting to their grandkids while they were still young enough to enjoy it and remember it. All of this would be happening in their go-go and slow-go years of their retirement. It gave them permission, not permission to be reckless, but permission to live. Confidence doesn't come from a high portfolio balance necessarily. It comes from understanding your plan's flexibility and knowing what to do and when life zigs or zags. Because at the end of the day, retirement, just like life, doesn't follow a perfect script. When you've seen the scenarios and you have a plan for each one, you might stop worrying and start living. Now, if this video helped you think differently about planning for your retirement, I'd encourage you to subscribe, so that way you don't miss future videos preparing yourself to be retirement ready. And if you want help feeling comfortable with your own retirement timeline, check out our retirement readiness review. Now, like I said, I'll put the link in the description for you. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and as always, great days ahead.